obviously have a vested interest in some good background and information to provide. Michael and I and Lynette discovered it very, very directly when we went to Victoria and sat in front of our group of MLAs, thinking that we were going to have some impact, that we were going to carry the torch of the province in the suggestions that we had as far as what initiatives that we as realtors and as organized real estate think are important for the province, and they didn't listen. They didn't listen.
There was a torch involved, though, right? Wasn't there? We got torched.
We got torched.
Not only did we not
Just
listen,
to
they
follow
got
up, if I may please. In a sense, the new model, it's going to kind of work in behalf of the old model because you are trying to better the model that we have now. Isn't that the case?
Yes, we're trying to better the model, have a better model than we have now.
If we vote yes, will the 6 get us a seat at the table and have an impact on the government in that? Because they blatantly ignored the organized real estate and threw us under the bus. Personally, I didn't see one person in leadership stand up for our industry all year long, and we just rolled over, and Christie's popularity went skyrocketed, and our industry just got handed it, and nobody in organized real estate in British Columbia stood up for this profession at all this year. And so are you telling us that the 6 will vote yes, and we'll have an impact, and Christie will actually listen to us now, or be able to control that? I find that difficult to believe.
It's a great point, Wade, and from my view, this puts us in a better position than we've ever been to do exactly that, for this reason. Right now, again, BCREA takes its direction from 11 boards on this weighted vote. So at the end of the day, the decision that gets made is the lowest common denominator. It's where we can agree, where we can all agree. And so even if there are some really good ideas up here and some really bad ideas down here, it's where we all agree. Because this is the governance model that we work within, and BCRA takes their direction from the boards. To Wade's point, if you get rid of the middle layer, so BCRA will no longer exist. It's not that it becomes a subset of Realtors of BC, it just no longer exists. And Realtors of BC represents 86% of the realtors in the province, which is, I think, 85% of the licensees in the province. You then go to government and you say, we are the voice. And Realtors of BC puts emphasis on the fact that we're lobbying, we are an advocacy organization, and we're at the table, and we're a force to be reckoned with. Yeah, I think they do listen to us, because now you can say you're that voice. BCRA has no ability to say it today.
It doesn't get us all the way there, Wade, but it's a big first step.
Yeah.
Ken. Just to clarify Lynette's comment, will the Realtors of BC be the voice or BCRA through them? Are they the voice? Who's the...
BCRA no longer exists, Ken.
An amalgamation, Ken,
They're gone. Okay, that's all I want to know.
Yeah.
So it's Realtors of BC.
Fernando's point, and I just want to help, because Lynette's from Alberta, or from Saskatchewan. So we have the board, they merged some of the areas in Saskatchewan, and they have separate. So you can in essence say that what we're voting for already has happened in Saskatchewan. Fair comment? It's kind of sitting there the way it is that part of Saskatchewan is on their own, and part of Saskatchewan formed and merged together. But they're still being held responsible and under the same banner of ethics and how they do business and everything, Fernando. So even though you have ROBC and you have those other board areas, that they're all still being under the same rules, regulations, everything else that, because they're still playing the same game and the same rules in Saskatchewan, because they have 2 pieces of the pie, because the full amalgamation of the province hasn't happened yet.
That's right. Except one thing that's different there, they still have the middle layer. And they still have the same issues in Saskatchewan, particularly on working with their government, that we're facing here. And so we're seeing this happen. Ontario, this happened in Ontario 2 weeks ago. And so, I think this positions Realtors in British Columbia very uniquely right now to go through this process, to be part of one voice.
So just relax. Just
He's very keen, I like that.
okay, so I'm getting a lot of names down. I don't want any one person to dominate the entire room. So I'm working through the names. Just relax. Becky.
Honest? Okay.
So I'm sorry, Lisa. I'm going to come back to second questions from Daryl and Paul as we get through the first questions, if that's fair, because hopefully everyone gets a chance to talk then, okay? I got yellow. All right, go ahead,
Okay.
Becky.
be naive to this, but I'm not understanding clearly why, if BCREA is the voice of these 11 boards, why they're not doing, excuse my language, but fucking anything to help us get this resolved. Why is it that if they've got these votes already within the boards, that they have the ability to go through and do these things, why is it that none of this is actually happening? It's a great question.
It's a very good question, and I'll answer it from my experience of the board. Maybe it's changed today, is that you have these elected people that get from these boards that all have a voice. Actually, Lynette's explanation was pretty good, that nothing gets done because we work to the middle ground. And sometimes, at some point, with some of these strong points, we've got to lead, follow, or get out of the way. And I think whenever you have today is a good example of it. We're going to get a lot of opinions today because we have 100 people in the room. The smaller the room gets, the quicker you get to where you need to be. And BCRA doesn't function. That was my experience when I was a director. It just doesn't function, and it'll never function under its current system. There's too many voices. Okay, that would be the only comment I'd make.
And that's a function of the structure. It's not through any deficiency on BCREA's part. It does what it's designed to do, and it's just a poor design.
So I don't understand. It's basically set up the same way as government is set up, where
I like the American
federal, BCREA is provincial, and then we've got regional MLAs and such like that within the OMREP boards and the different boards. So how is it that our government body works and that model works? It can be arguable whether it works really well or not, but we can't get anything to
Because
it.
we elect a prime minister, who puts a cabinet together, and providing you have a majority government, they go. That room of 20 people runs the country, not 300. I think that would be the way I would describe it.
So why are we not looking for that kind of a model?
We are.
So Becky, so BCREA is a messenger. They have to pool the information that comes from the boards, but they're not a decision maker. They can't even take the information and get submitted to them and make a decision.
Do they just not have the authority to do so? Right.
Diane?
I agree with Wade in lots of ways that I don't think we're going to win with this government in the discussion. So we have lost our rights to a degree already. We're not going to get them back. So
Not today, Diane, maybe later.
if we amalgamate like we say we're going to do, how is that really going to assist the realtors here? We still have voices, we still have voting, we still have all of those things. Why are we jumping on this bandwagon now? Why don't we wait till everybody takes all the nonsense out of this? Because the government's got a lot more surprises for us, you can guarantee that. This industry's got a lot more surprises. We have no idea how this is going to go down. And once we go down the road, we're down the road. So why don't we wait till we see what is going on with all of it? And then we jump on if we like it.
We got rocked twice this year. That happened.
I know we did,
Or
and
more
we're not
times.
gonna
But
change.
you're gonna say, let's wait. We just got rocked by the government. And if you didn't notice it, yeah, but for those of us who've been the better part of 30 years, this has almost never happened to that degree. This is the first time we've talked about possibly getting a voice. That if we get together, and Anthony, I hope you give the example of the TREB that you mentioned to us in a small meeting, because I think that one's critical to understand what we as a group could do as a voice. The second thing you guys should talk about is discipline, right? The disciplinary actions that if we're going to interboard sell, which seems to be occurring more and more and more, we have no policy to discipline outside of our board region. We can't discipline the Vancouver person that comes up here to sell our property, right? Some things have got to start changing because we're not acting like separate entities around the province, right? And we need to have a voice with the government. It's time, right?
So that's a big one, Grant. We'll be talking about that today for sure.
So, a couple of things. I mean, Diane is about, why do this now? And again, everybody can decide for themselves on that. The changes being made are not about necessarily saying, this is the solution to we know what the problem is going to be 2 years from now. This is the solution to set us up to be able to deal with it, whatever the issues are, 6 months from now, a year from now, 2 years from now. What we do know for a fact is that we are not set up today to deal with anything that comes our way. That's the challenge. So the idea of the structural change is not knowing what the future is, it's being prepared for it. So, do you want me to give that story? I mean, just the voice story, and this is the one to speak even to what Wade said.
We've called it the voice story?
The voice story.
And knowing that,
Where's the background
the
music?
voice story. Okay, here's the voice story.
In Ottawa recently for meetings with our MPs, and one of the presentations for all the members that were from across the country was a presentation on property transfer tax and how changes have happened and how they've been implemented and how they've impacted the consumer. And the panel was basically BC and Ontario. And so our representatives, Charles Weed, president of Fraser Valley, spoke on behalf of BC and explained what had just happened with the things that had just been happening with property transfer tax. The foreign buyers tax being implemented, just the changes to PTT that the government decided, the government implemented, and it happens tomorrow. With little and no consultation with organized real estate, the stakeholders in this, and how that had happened and how we had or hadn't been part of it. Keep in mind that for, I'm going to guess, at least the last 5 years, when I talked about us going to Victoria to lobby our MLAs on issues that affect our industry, property transfer tax has been on the table for probably 5 or 10 years. Ever since property transfer tax was brought into effect, we have consistently tried to lobby the government to say, make this more fair. I mean, when it was implemented, the 1% of the first 200,000, that was the average price of a home was under 200,000. Now, obviously, we're in a different place, and they've never changed it or indexed it to allow, to enable it to be fair. So our impact on those decisions have been zero. Ontario, the Ontario government,
Especially the City of Toronto.
City of Toronto, attempted to make a change. And actually, if you know the details, I'd rather have you speak to this. I can only speak to the results, but I don't.
No, go ahead, because that's all that's important.
Okay. So there was a proposal to make a change to property transfer tax that was going to negatively impact the industry. It was going to be more expensive for property owners. And TREB, because they have the power and the resources, undertook a public advertising campaign against it. Stood up and said, this is going to affect you negatively. And the hashtag was something along the lines of, don't let them steal your dream. They had the resources to do that because of the size and the organization and their ability to make decisions on it quickly. They implemented that advertising campaign and effectively stopped that from actually happening. That is the vision to the idea of having 86% of realtors represented. The resources, combined resources of 7 organizations, all healthy organizations with reserves and resources and in money and people, that we would actually have the resources to be able to take a position and a stand. As it stands now, any one of our individual boards decides to, lift the flag up and say, hey, we're against this. A, we don't have the resources to do it, and B, we, when we go and stand in front of our MLAs, we represent 1,200 members. Representing.
Wade, I just want to throw one final comment. And Diane, I think you have the best interests of people in mind. Your heart's in it. With the discussion about waiting, the reason we're here today having this discussion is because we've been waiting for decades to get our talking head on the top of the animal. We need to do that.
And I'm sorry, can I just add one more point on this? In terms of the wait and see, because some of the other boards, coming back to the conversation at the beginning, some of the other boards are taking a bit of a wait and see approach, which happens in organized real estate a lot. The opportunity for OMREB now, and every other board that's participating, is to be at the table. Anthony said this isn't about designing it for an outcome. This is about designing an organization that allows us to be prepared for whatever the eventualities are and be able to create some of those eventualities. And the same thing goes for OMREB or any other board choosing to go forward. If OMREB votes in favor of the amalgamation and is at the table, we have a representative. One person, one vote. this weighted voting goes away. So Anthony has the same opportunity as the president of every one of the other boards to help shape what the new organization looks like and the types of things like we are talking about today that need to be important for a new entity and a new organization. So I think that's an important piece. The people that sit back and wait and see, if they join a year down the road, they join whatever is there. It's, you know, you then get amalgamated. You don't get to be a part of it. So I think there's something to consider in that as well.
So are you saying there's 6 votes? That's it?
6 votes at the
At the-
7.
Well, currently, what's the president's working group table, which that's where, you know, basically all the information gets vetted and you know, basically decisions are made as to what's moving forward. If the amalgamation goes forward, if the vote is yes, there will be a transition board of directors. So the initial board of directors for the organization will be the presidents of the boards that are part of the amalgamation to start with. That's expected to be about 6 months or so before the first AGM, where the first, you know, permanent board of directors will actually be elected by the members. So all that to say that the board of directors, the transition board of directors, that's going to help make the decisions that determine how this is structured and how things actually get rolled out, will be represented equally by me on behalf of our members, you know, the president of SOREB on behalf of their members, Kadria, Northern BC, Fraser Valley, and Vancouver, each one of us having a single vote on that board of directors. So in other words, it's not like BCRA where Vancouver says something, it counts for, you know, 50% of the vote.
Can you draw the model so that we can kind of visually see it?
And when's it going to be called now?
It is in the questions, Fran. It is in the questions. If you read it,
Okay.
it's really well described in the questions how it's going to work. But
I can draw the flower.
you draw, Candace. Is that your question?
Where's the answer?
Can you stand up? It's really hard.
Who's going to be the governing body for, like, we're talking about going from 11 arms now to 7, the 6 boards, and then the 1. Who's going to govern the other 6 boards if BC Rio's gone?
They govern
Like, who's going
themselves.
to provide those services to them? If it goes from CREA to Realtors of BC, who's taking care of those?
Realtors of BC becomes BCREA,
So they'll provide services.
which is education primarily. It's currently government lobbying, but that will be done by this body, so.
So the services currently provided by BCRA to the other boards would continue to be provided by Realtors of BC. Just those base services that they get today. They would not, you know, the premise of building this organization is to provide higher level and better services to members of Realtors of BC. But the services that the other boards, non-participating boards would get would be the same basic services they get from BCRA today.
So Fernando, I'll come back to you. Let's come back to, I think, answering the question here, which was, what's the structure currently? Can you tell me, Lynette, how many of these 6 boards that we have voting have to vote yes?
So there's a threshold. For the amalgamation to happen, there have to be a minimum of 4 boards who vote yes, representing a minimum of 15,000 realtors, plus BCRA. The BCRA vote must be positive too for the amalgamation to occur.
So Vancouver votes yes. That's 13,000, right?
Yeah.
And then it really doesn't matter.
Except
Well, it does.
Well, if they vote no,
Yeah.
it's a moot point.
That's right.
It's a moot point. We're wasting our time. But they need 4 boards after that, and they'll get the 4 boards. If they get the 4 boards, they'll get over that.
They need 3 boards. So trust me, there's been a lot of math done. So it has to be either Fraser Valley or OMREB have to be a part of it. So if both of those boards are out, even though the Kootenays, Kamloops, SOREB, and BC Northern and Vancouver vote, that wouldn't quite get you to 15,000. So it has to be Vancouver and either OMREB plus 1 other, well, plus 2 others, or Vancouver plus Fraser Valley plus 2.
So SOREB's 200, Kamloops is 200, Kootenays is.
Or no, Kamloops is 300. They're all just under 300.
There's tons of math available.
Yeah.
Really,
They're
we
all
need to
under
just
300
focus on
except
what
for
we
us,
wanna do.
1,100, and the Fraser Valley is
35-ish.
3,500. Fernando, I'm going to come back to you because you're on the second question list. Sorry.
13,000 Vancouver.
Let's go with Kent.
They're assuming
Hey, thanks for all this on the board level. I'm starting to get a good picture. I'm just wondering if we can dial it down to the individual realtor. And maybe I'll throw it out to the room too. Like, what are the top 5 pros for the individual realtor, how it's going to affect us on a day-to-day basis? So it's great, board level, great services, but boom, on my day-to-day, how's this going to affect
I
us?
think Francis has that on the agenda to do, and you can start it whenever you want.
We'll, at the very end, we're going to go through pros and cons. Becky, you're on the second question list.
Yeah, I know.
L&C.
I have 2 little questions, if you already answered the first one, because I missed it, I came in late. Wade kind of addressed it, we talked about the Saskatchewan board. It seems like most people that I talk to, that their concern is they're going to be drowned out with 10,000 people. So the question is, could we, has it ever been looked at, the same, going back to the way the Okanagan Main Line, have Soren, Kamloops, et cetera, and then having Fraser Valley with the lower mainland, et cetera, and merge it into doing this little stage step to have 4 or 5 groups like what you alluded to in Saskatchewan, just because it seems everyone's concerned they're going to be lost in Vancouver. That's the first question. The second one is the fellow in front of Katrina mentioned the discipline. I thought, oh yeah. Isn't this whole issue because people realtors doing bad things or illegal things? And that comes down to the discipline in front of the North Okanagan Division. And it's about penalties. Like, these people are getting away with tons of stuff, and there's no discipline. It seems to be no discipline. There's one particular person in the North Okanagan Division that openly, after a couple of beers, will laugh and make fun of all the disciplines these guys complain about constantly. Gets disciplined and laughs at $1,000. It's $10,000 commission.
Well, actually, fines are bigger in Augreb than they were at the real estate council.
But it's less than a referral. There's no teeth for people that do things, it seems to be. And it's openly joked about, but anyway.
I think the government's going to take that away from us anyway, so. Tasha, and then I'm missing hands if you want to put your.
What do you want to
answer
answer?
that question, or?
Sure.
I thought you were making a political statement.
Well, the first one is actually a good question. Has it been looked at? Has these different options of, like amalgamating,
Put it into a stage.
as part of the process? It was a huge part of the process. And there was no predetermination as to what the end state proposal would be. A group, including presidents, staff, and realtors, and industry experts, put in a room, and it's like, okay, look at every possible model there is in the world that could work for organized real estate, and start vetting. And they started with the world, but they got to 25 that would even potentially work for organized real estate. Then they worked that down, based on pros and cons, down to 5. Then they worked it down on pros and cons based to 3 different models. And a couple of those models were a couple boards. There was a couple boards of BCRA, and there were some options. And all that to say that, yes, exhaustively analyzed to death what could possibly make the most sense that would work. And of those 3 models, they all could potentially work, and I believe the last factor was efficiency and cost effectiveness. Of those last 3 models that they did the most serious analysis on, it was like a $7 million difference between going to a single entity or any one of those other options.
Not anyone, the next best
The next
one.
best, the next best one. So, again, to think that this is just to be sure, to be clear, no one came up with this and sat down and go, let's just create a single model, this is what we got to do. This was, okay, start from scratch. Pretend like we were going to, we're building this industry, we're starting today. What would be the best way to do it? From an effectiveness standpoint and from an efficiency standpoint. And I know, one of the members of that group was Charles Weed, the president of Fraser Valley, and he very eloquently says it every time. Every person in that group that walked into that room to start with, not one of them believed at the start that a single entity was the right model. But they all went in with open minds and went through the process of actually, anybody can have their own ideas and their opinions, but by going through the actual process of analyzing it, doing the due diligence of how things could work better or not, and then coming up with a result and having it presented and say, it's a no-brainer, this is the one that makes the most sense. And even at the end said, it was still tough. Because even though, yes, on paper, this makes sense, it was tough, because this isn't what I thought. This isn't what I thought would be the best idea. But getting to the point of realizing what is it that makes the most sense for realtors in this province. And that's when, at the end of the day, they all concurred, based on the evidence that was gathered, that this is the best way. So,
And also just to partially answer your second question briefly, we're going to talk about the pros and cons. There is a mechanism built into Realtors of BC to get the professional standards very clearly outlined and to be able to cross-pollinate between the different areas to make sure that we're making ourselves be honest with how we service our clients in the event that you're outside of order. That'll be addressed.
I'll come to you, Barb. Tasha?
I just had a question about how it's going to change the education, because I'm a new realtor and I know a lot of us are. And I was shocked how short the program was, and I think a lot of the problems that come down the road with realtors stem from maybe a lack of education in the beginning. And I think maybe we need to be more proactive in a sense that people need to be actually taught how to write contracts and not learn about how Canada came to be in the 1800s, because that doesn't actually help me be a realtor today. So I just wanted to know, like, if this would help that in terms of education.
that's awesome question, awesome feedback, and again, very important to talking about who this is being done for is the industry moving forward, not the industry of the past.
And Tasha, our licensing body is responsible for our education, and the chapters that you read a year and a half ago are the same chapters I read in 1987. Literally, they're verbatim. I can take my textbook out, and the first 5 chapters are verbatim what I read in 1987, and they are a waste of time, I agree.
So, but on that point, wouldn't it be great if we had an industry who could go to the regulator that we deliver education on behalf of, right? So because you guys read the same chapters, BCREA is just the delivery agent, right? So we talk about the fact that BCREA does education. Well, primarily they deliver the government's education to you guys. But wouldn't it be great if we were able to, as an industry, go to government and say, look, we want to raise the standard, right? We want to be better. We want to have better professionals. Sorry? I just didn't hear your comment.
We have to pay for that. Like, and that's the thing. So what you're saying we're saving $7 million by moving to a new model. I'm assuming that $7 million is coming back into all of our pockets.
Absolutely not.
They'll answer that in a second.
But the point is, if as an industry we can go to government and say, for the same cost, we want a better level of education, and we are here to be able to help develop that. I mean, you look at the $7 million of savings, $7 million of resources that are being freed up by reducing duplication, invest that back into doing a better job of education. So the Vancouver board pours a lot of money into education and frankly duplicates a lot of what BCREA does to a certain degree, but they also don't share it with the rest of the province. So if we could pool that resource, raise the bar of professionalism and share that out, it's a win for you guys on the ground. That to me is one of the most tangible benefits that you get.
And Tasha, UBC is the person or the institution that provides the education. Our licensing body has gone to them and said, please rewrite the course. The most blatant one is the calculator, which has been around since the 1980s, which none of us need anymore. And UBC just won't spend the money to do it. And right now there is no other body that has stepped forward and said, we're rewriting that textbook and do it. So it does make it a bit awkward. Mr. Gagnon.
I'm a little confused regarding the BCREA and the fact that who's got the authority to actually dissolve BCREA? Because we're saying, okay, we're voting, and we get the majority, and then who says that then you can step in and say, okay, all you guys are gone? What's that mechanism? How does that work?
It's a good question. It's BCRA members are the boards, and the votes of the boards are what dictates how things work at BCRA. So that vote will be posed on December 7th, and it is the member boards that get to vote on it. Plain and simple.
It's no different than OMREB. So OMREB is a nonprofit organization formed under the Societies Act. So is BCREA. Okay? So OMREB's members, all of you, vote on that question on December 6th. It's exactly the same resolution, by the way, that the member boards will be voting on at BCREA on December 7th. It's just that the members of BCREA are boards, and they're not individual people. So the boards of directors of every one of the boards need to determine how they will cast their organizational vote.
So Dawn, in a simple sense, we are going to tell our board of directors what to do. That board of directors is going to go by Anthony to BCRE and carry that vote. I would presume that when Anthony got there, he would follow whatever the vote would say. Anthony, I'll stand beside you when I say that. No, that's what's going to happen. And what's the percentage of votes of boards that has to actually vote at BCREA?
BCREA is 67% of votes cast.
Same as Omrit. Our threshold for the vote for our members is 67%. Same for BCRA. We're both governed by the Societies Act in that regard.
And that's based on the 28 votes that Vancouver has. So again, if Vancouver votes yes, BCREA is going to vote yes.
There have to be a couple more votes other than Vancouver, but
It passes. I had Barb next on my list.
Just quick, which boards aren't on board?
The boards that have opted out are Victoria, Vancouver Island, Powell River, and their 26 members, Chilliwack, and the Kootenay Board.
They're on board to vote.
They are not.
No, forgive me. The boards that are on board, they're on board to vote. They're not on board to
Yes,
say yes.
sorry, no, absolutely.
No,
The boards that are participating are bringing it to the members to vote on.
And I think the point here, Paul, is that our board of directors has made a decision to allow our membership to vote on this. There actually was at one point a board that actually decided on behalf of their membership, I won't say which one, that they weren't going to vote.
What's the plan of attack? You must have come make your turn.
Yeah.
You know what, and
Although
there's going to be afterward opportunities, I know, because everybody needs to have a chance to talk, but I mean, this is not the only opportunity. We've got meetings today, we've got coffee on Wednesday, we've got a town hall coming up on the 28th, so please, we want to get as many questions answered, but this is not the last opportunity to ask your
Does
questions.
anyone have a first question? Pat?
Has there been any reaction from the provincial government with the proposal of the super board?
nothing formal.
There's been no formal reaction. I mean, again, because there's nothing to react to until it actually happens. Part of the hope and desire here is, you know, they've been clear to us, to all the boards, you failed, you didn't self-regulate, and this is where you're at now. And at least from my perspective, this would be a step for us to go, okay, we heard you, here's what we're doing, and here's how we're going to change it. So, but obviously that conversation can't be had until we actually know that we're able to do it.
And we're not looking for an adversarial role with the provincial government. We want a role of engagement. We want to be able to sit down and talk to them about future real estate in the province.
Bill, do you have a question?
So if 6 boards go in and we have 5 that aren't, the government just looks at it and says, you know what, you can't even organize yourself because you can't get 11 boards together.
I don't think that's the
I'm going to
case.
go back to the Confederation story.
Yeah, you've got 86%
No, I know,
of your membership that are voting, and I think probably 3 or 4 of those other boards our senses, may want to get involved sooner than later. But I think they've got to look at membership as 86%, and that's a pretty significant number on an initial amalgamation by historical standards.